Now, identifying the x-intercept from an equation is just a little bit more complicated than finding that y-intercept. And the reason why is that we will never see the x expressed in terms of y. We're always going to have to do just a little bit of manipulation in order to solve for x. Fortunately, I have only found 2 types of equations on the SATs for x-intercept questions. And I'm going to show you an example of each right now. Hey folks, Steve the Math Buddha here, and today we're going to be looking at x and y intercept questions. As you can see, there are a lot of these questions on the SATs. I count almost 3 per exam. And you know what? They are all really, really easy. The x and y intercepts are just the points where the graph of a function crosses the x and y axis. So in this graph, for example, the y-intercept is just this point up here, the 0, 4. And the x-intercept is just this point down here, the negative 2, 0. And you know what? A lot of times it really is that simple. I counted an average of 1 question on each exam where all you have to do is pluck that point right off a shown graph. Now they're never going to actually show you the coordinates like I have here. That you're probably going to have to figure out for yourself. But a lot of times they are actually going to show you a graph, and all you have to do is identify that point where the graph crosses the relevant axis. Now, if they ask you to identify the x or y intercept from an equation, it gets a little more complicated, and we're going to get to those questions in just a minute. But first, there are a couple of points that I do want to make. First, intercepts are always points. They have 2 coordinates. For the y-intercept, that first coordinate is always 0. That's our x value, which is always 0 along that y-axis. The second coordinate is going to be f of 0. Now for the x-intercept, it's the second coordinate that's always going to be 0. That's our y value, which is always 0 along that x-axis. And the first value is going to be the value of x for which f of x is equal to 0. But sometimes they won't actually ask for both coordinates. I mean, if one of the coordinates is always 0, the relevant coordinate would be the other coordinate. So what they might do is they might ask you for the y-coordinate of the y-intercept, in which case the answer would just be a single value, the 4. They could also ask what is f of 0, which is exactly the same thing as asking what is the y-coordinate of the y-intercept. Now for the x-intercept, what they could ask is for what value of x will f of x be 0, which is exactly the same thing as asking what is the x-coordinate of the x-intercept. And in this case, again, it would just be a single value, this value right here, the minus 2. The second thing that I want to point out to you is that we could have more than one x-intercept. We could never have multiple y-intercepts, because we're always looking at a function of the form y equals f of x, and we can only have one value for f of 0. But we could have several values of x for which f of x equals 0. Consider this graph, for example. This is the graph of y equals x cubed minus 7x minus 6. And as you can see, this graph crosses the x-axis 3 times. Now, one thing that they might do on a question like this, where they want the x-intercept, is they will make it multiple choice. And only one of our possible intercepts is going to be shown on that list of choices. Another thing they could do is they could ask for the x-intercept with the positive x value. If they ask that, we know that the answer has to be this value here, the 3, because the other 2 x-coordinates have negative values. Now folks, if you like my SAT videos and you want to see more, please show me by liking, sharing, and subscribing. And hey, let's turn on those notifications so that you will know when future videos are coming out. Okay, so what if they don't actually show the graph? What if we have to identify the x or y intercept from an equation? Well, for that, we are going to look at some specific questions from the SATs. And let's start with a y-intercept question. Here's a question from the May 2022 US exam. It's question number 3-2. Now, I do want to point out that the y-intercept questions are particularly easy because they always have the y isolated on the left side of the equation. And we know that our first coordinate is always 0. All we have to do is find the second coordinate, which is f of 0. So all we have to do is plug x equals 0 into the right side of the equation and calculate. And when we do that, we get y equals 0 plus 3 equals 3. So our point is going to be 0, 3. And note, by the way, how they phrased this question. They could have asked, what is the y-intercept of y equals x plus 3 on the xy plane? But instead, they said f of x equals x plus 3 and y equals f of x. Don't let the phrasing throw you. This and this together is the same as this. All we have to do is plug in x equals 0 and calculate. Now, identifying the x-intercept from an equation is just a little bit more complicated than finding that y-intercept. And the reason why is that we will never see the x expressed in terms of y. We're always going to have to do just a little bit of manipulation in order to solve for x. Fortunately, I have only found 2 types of equations on the SATs for x-intercept questions. And I'm going to show you an example of each right now. The first type of equation that we're going to look at is the linear type. And for that one, let's bring up an example from the October 2021 exam. This is question 417. Now, all the linear cases that I have come up with all have this form, the ax plus by equals c form. And don't let that constant term throw you. They specifically state that q is a constant in this expression, which means that we just treat it like it's any other number. Now, they don't actually ask for the x-intercept here. They ask for the coordinates of the point where our line crosses the x-axis. But that's what the x-intercept is. It's a point. We have to find 2 coordinates. And the second coordinate is always going to be 0. And as you can see here, all our multiple choice options have 0 in that second position. We just have to find the x-coordinate. Now, to find our x-coordinate, all we have to do is plug y equals 0 into our equation here. And that's really simple to do because when we plug in y equals 0, the 3y will just drop out and we're going to be left with 4x equals q. Now we just have to divide both sides by 4 and we get our desired result, x equals q over 4. And again, we're looking for a point. Q over 4 is the first coordinate. The second coordinate is going to be 0. So our final answer is going to be this one here. Q over 4, 0. And note, it always works this way for our ax plus by equals c case. The second coordinate is just 0, and the first coordinate is going to be this term here over this term here, for this case being q over 4. Okay, so how about the nonlinear case? Well, for the nonlinear case, we are always looking at a product. And here's a really nice example. It's question 318 from the March 2020 exam. Now, it's important to note here that they don't even mention the x-axis in this problem. They do not use the word x-intercept. They don't even mention the variable y. They simply give us an equation set equal to 0 and ask us to solve for x. The reason why I'm including this question as an xy-intercept question is because it's equivalent to this question here. Note, if they asked the question this way, then we would have to set y equals f of x equal to 0 and then find the positive value of x that solves the equation, which is exactly what they're asking us to do here. And the key to solving these product questions is to recognize that a product is equal to 0 if and only if one of the factors is equal to 0. So let's check out these factors one by one. Can this factor be 0? No, of course not. This factor is 5. How about this factor here, the x minus 3? Well, sure, that could be 0. We just add 3 to both sides. This term, the minus 3, is going to drop out, and we're going to be left with x equals 3. And that's a positive value, so that meets our criteria. And since we're only allowed one answer, that one must be it. But let's check this last factor anyway. Let's check this x plus 1. Could x plus 1 be 0? Well, sure, we just subtract 1 from both sides. The plus 1 will drop out, and we will be left with x equals negative 1. But that's a negative result, which means that it does not fulfill our criteria, which means that we're going to have to stick with our original answer, the 3. And this is question 318, which means it's not a multiple choice question. We have to enter that 3 into our grid. And we can enter that 3 in any column of the grid. As long as we leave all the other columns blank, it will be interpreted as a 3. So that's it for my X and Y intercept video. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions. And as usual, if you have any problems with any of the questions that I have identified on this subject matter, you can feel free to email me, and I will do my best to resolve your issues. As usual, you will find links in the description to the Fiverr page of the amazing artist that creates the designs for this t-shirt, and also to the Zazzle website where I get the t-shirts printed. Now, if you're going to buy anything at either one of those sites, please use my links because it helps to support my channel. Thanks for joining. I am the Math Buddha, and I am signing off once again. Have a great night and have a truly pleasant tomorrow.